Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Odin's Movie Blog. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope you're doing well. And today we are talking about Martin Scorsese, who has now doubled down on his recent comments, bashing movies like the Marvel Cinematic Universe and many other giant blockbuster films. And as I made clear from the last video when I talked about Martin Scorsese, I am basically in full support of everything that he's saying. I think that when it comes to these giant superhero films, these giant big budget films, I really do think that they so overshadow everything else that there really is no room. There is no space, it seems, for any real honest, good films, narrative-driven films that are not based on previous material and that are not a part of a much larger universe, which is really, I think, leading to the death of cinema in a lot of ways. And it's only because of things like Netflix and things like Amazon Video and all of the streaming platforms that essentially are now becoming the new cinema, since the cinema itself has been taken over by these giant big-budget films. This is something that actually really coincides very well with the covers that I've been doing of the box office over the past year, where I've been pointing out that the highest grossing films of this past year are all owned by Disney. They're all giant big budget films, the one exception being, of course, Sony's Spider-Man, but that one was obviously done in conjunction with Disney. And what you really honestly start to see is that many films that are even lower budget films are not able to have any room to be able to make any type of money and able to be successful. And that's the reason why I think Martin Scorsese is speaking out the way that he is, because what he's talking about and what he's really revealing is that it's because of these giant big budget popcorn films that have become so pervasive. In the good old days, it seemed that there used to be a lot more of a balance, right? You had the big budget films, you had the movies like Jaws, but even Jaws, I think, had a lot more to it than just it being a big popcorn flick as well. And unfortunately, it seems like most of these giant popcorn flips have kind of just lost any sense of being just a down-to-earth good film, in addition to being appealing to the eyes and being a giant big event type of film. But what it's doing is that it's essentially making studios only want to make films like that. And I think that's something that Martin Scorsese tries to clear up in his comments here, where he basically doubles down and says, no, I still believe that these films are not real cinema, but he goes on to really explain his comments even more so. So let's go ahead and dive into it, especially since Samuel L. Jackson indeed had a comment about this, saying it ain't going to stop nobody from making movies, which is true. He's not trying to tell people how to make movies. He's not trying to tell people that they can't make movies. He's merely trying to point out that what's going on right now with Marvel, Disney, and all the big budget films other than Disney. I always bring up Disney because Disney is, again, as I pointed out, the only studio that has the highest grossing films of the year that have all grossed $1 billion. Only one of their films so far has not reached that amount, and it was Dumbo, which we've been able to pretty much figure out was the reason why it wasn't successful was because it came out in the wrong decade, where people really weren't clamoring for that film and really didn't have a desire to bring their kids, because it came out to the point where the people that were kids when Dumbo came out are now so much older that they don't have kids to bring to that theater anymore, but also because the film was much darker than a lot of the other films that they've had so far. And so here is what he's told to the Hollywood Reporter. He says, theaters have become amusement parks, which I totally agree with. He says, that is all fine and good, but don't invade everything else in that sense. That is fine and good for those who enjoy that type of film. And by the way, knowing what goes into them now, I admire what they do. It's not my kind of thing. It simply is not. It's creating another kind of audience that thinks cinema is that. And I think that's a lot of truth to it. So not only does he make clear that he respects the people behind the camera and that he respects the work that goes into making these giant films, he also wants to make it very clear that they're making now audiences believe that this is what film is supposed to be, that this is what cinema is all about. But what you're going to see in a second is what kind of danger that brings in, at least to those people that do love honest-to-goodness films. He says this, it's not cinema, it's something else. We shouldn't be invaded by it. We need cinemas to step up and show films that are narrative films. And then he goes on here. There's no doubt that seeing a film with an audience is really important. There is a problem, though. We have to make the film. We've run out of room, in a sense. There was no room for us to make this picture for many reasons, but having the backing of a company that says you will have no interference, you can make the picture as you want, the trade-off being it streams. With theatrical distribution prior to that, I figure that's a chance we take on this particular project. Basically, what he's revealing here, for those that maybe don't quite understand, is that the problem that have now come about because of these giant studios doing and focusing on these giant big popcorn superhero films is that it basically leaves no room for any of these smaller independent projects, for any of these smaller films that are original, that don't have to rely on a much broader extended universe. That's the reason why I've been giving so much love and praise to movies like Joker, because even though it's very much tied in to the superhero, supervillain, villain, hero, comic book universe, as of course being connected to such a iconic character as Joker, it does so in a way that it pays homage to and really is in and of itself a classy film. It is a good, honest-to-God film. It is a well-done, well-produced, solid movie that happens to feature a comic book character. And we don't get enough of those movies anymore. And one of the reasons why is because studios have become so involved. And of course, this has been true for a very long time. Many films have been destroyed because of studio interference. But now it's gotten to the point where films are so big and the main focus of studios is just these giant films that it leaves no room for honest, new, creative thought to come into play, because the studio is going to look at any new ideas, any new original ideas, and say, how can I make money off of that? Even if the film might only cost about $1 million and only needs to make a few million back, which a studio could easily do by just giving some backing and some promotion to it, they don't want to, because they would much rather put in the least amount of effort by making it so that they hire somebody that they've known and worked with before, who's going to give them a cookie cutter script that's going to be exactly the same in so many different ways to other movies that have come beforehand, and somehow guarantee them giant big box office results. Scorsese is pointing out here that he had to go to a studio like Netflix in order to get the freedom to make the movies that he wants to make. And I have a feeling that many other filmmakers are going to fall into the same category here, where there's many films that they themselves might want to make, but because of the studio system in the current way and in its current iteration, they can't. Because either one, they have to sacrifice their creative integrity by allowing the studios to play around with their ideas and their stories all that they want. We see something very similar to that with what happened with Star Wars, right? When Disney bought Star Wars, George Lucas had an idea of how the universe could keep on going, and what did? They bought the ideas and then said, no, we're going to do our own thing, and then they ended up trying to kowtow to political entities. They tried to kowtow to a certain audience because they thought that the universe needed to be expanded, and they expanded the universe without telling a good story. They could have done both, but they decided to focus just on trying to so-called expand the universe rather than actually make a good, honest-to-God film. I keep saying that a lot, but it is indeed very true, because there is a difference, a seeming difference between honest cinema, good film, and big budget popcorn film. There used to be less of a difference. There used to be a case where you could have a big budget film, or you could have a big event film that was also a very good movie. And sometimes we still have that. I think Joker's a great example, where that is a big event film that's making big event money, and it only costs $55 million to make. And I'm praying that Warner Brothers and other studios can look to that and say, hey, wait a minute, we can put money behind a project and allow a creator to do their own thing, not put crazy amounts of money, not put hundreds of millions of dollars behind it, but also not get involved so much that we end up taking that person's creative integrity and we can actually get some money out of it. If the main focus is about money, again, I understand we live in a capitalist society. And again, I'm mostly fine with that. But if you're going to start to infringe upon the creative freedom of other individual people, of other individual filmmakers, for the sake of you trying to control the narrative and you trying to control the films that come out to the point of you destroying original concepts and original ideas, that I'm not okay with. And I think that's exactly what Martin Scorsese is talking about here with his film The Irishman. I'm so excited to see it. It's one of the only films that I really have any anticipation for left of this year. And it's really sad because we've had a year of, a few good films, Joker, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and Alita Battle Angel. But notice how two of those films were definitely on the lower budget side of things, coming from the only real filmmakers left in Hollywood in Martin Scorsese and Quentin Tarantino. We don't have a lot of those people left. We don't have a lot of those directors that are able to have full control over their projects and be able to really put their passion onto the screen. It's really sad that we live in this world that we currently do, where, yeah, we have these popcorn films, which, yes, I agree with Martin Scorsese. That's great. It's great that there's an audience for that, but when that becomes the only audience, when that becomes the sole focus of these studios, other films and filmmakers are left in the dust, left to fade away, or to have to go to studios like Netflix, which, as we know, especially with the giant corporations now diving into that platform, with Disney creating its own service and so many other giant studios doing the same thing, it's going to be pretty soon that there's going to be no room whatsoever for any independent creative thought, any independent creative mindset, because everything will be owned and dominated by these giant corporation, giant idea, cookie cutter type films and stories in the television sphere that are just downright stupid and add nothing to the overall lexicon of great films and great TV shows in our history. But anyway, let me throw thoughts about this. I know that not everyone on the channel agrees with me on this. I know that everyone's going to be on the same page with me, but hopefully you can understand why I think that there's a genuine fear here, that especially with people like Disney going into the Disney Plus service and basically going after Netflix's bottom line in this way, that yeah, it's competition. Yeah, it's about them trying to fight and them trying to compete for viewers. But when you have Disney in there who's saying, let me go ahead and give you all this stuff that's been done before, and we're just going to redo it all again. And because now so many people have kids and multiple kids at that, and want their kids to experience what they want to experience, or think they're going to allow their kids to experience what they want to experience by bringing them to see the Lion King, live action remake, or Aladdin live action remake, etc. What we're going to end up doing is they're going to end up driving away so many of the original filmmakers that are still out there, and any new and up-and-coming people also, because instead, they're going to have to kowtow to Disney, kowtow to the giant corporations, and go ahead and make films that they want, because they want to make giant films that only make giant sums of money, and leave all the independent films, all the original ideas, out in the dust, and maybe to go on YouTube, maybe to go on another service, but it's becoming harder every single year, every single day even, for these films to be made. But let me know your thoughts about this and all the things we talked about in the comment section below. If you like this video, smash the like button, give us a subscribe. It helps us out a lot. It's been a long day. You have all been amazing and beautiful people. Have a wonderful day. And as always, God bless.